Right, good evening, everybody. Well, Cabinet, this... Thank you. Sorry, get the microphone working, there we are. Good evening, tonight's Council Cabinet. We have apologies from Councillors Banwaite, Raju and Graves. Have any other apologies? Councillor Afzal's just on his way, he's outside apparently, so he'll be joining us shortly. Item 2, late items. There is one late item which hopefully you've received an addendum to item 10. So we'll consider that at item 10. Receipt of petitions, there are none. Identification of urgent items to which calling will not apply, there are none. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, I'll take that as no then. And item 6, minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of November. Everyone's happy with those, I'll accept those then, thank you. Item 7 then is recommendations from the Executive Scrutiny Board, and as usual we'll cover those as we go through each item. So we move on to key decisions then. Item 8, procurement of educational placements for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And that is Councillor Russell, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Council's in the process of further strengthening our procurement and placement procedures for independent and non-maintained special schools, school and college placements for children and young people with SEND. This proposal will establish a similar system to a framework agreement, with the exception that organisations can join the framework at any time and it's run as an electronic process. I'm advised by officers that this is in accordance with the Council's contract procedure rules and the public contracts regulations. The reasons for us doing this are quite straightforward really. I think it will improve our current system, give transparency not just to children and young people and their families but also providers of the service, to make it a consistent and streamlined approach for all providers. Further improvements to the overall management of high-cost SEND educational placements is a key priority for us in the People's Directorate, as the cost of those placements are very, very high, as we know. There is also a potential future opportunity to establish a regional SEND procurement system, similarly as we have explored with other areas. So discussions are underway with a number of local authorities about exploring that option, which is something we are looking at. The framework that's proposed here tonight, if Council Cabinet agrees it, will be live from April next year and would run for a maximum period of 5 years. Just, if I may, Chair, referring to the recommendations from the Executive Scrutiny Board last night, I believe reassurance was given to the members at the board last night, but Mark Taylor will provide the reassurance for Council Cabinet that the report is acceptable under the scheme of delegation and in line with the Council's financial procedure rules.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there are any questions or comments on this item. Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Just wondered really, has any informal soundings been taken with current external providers, or also, of course, with parents' representatives? And also, I'm presuming the actual process of deciding that somebody can't be provided for in the city and therefore has to go outside will remain the same. It's just what happens onwards from that. Am I correct?
Yes, I think Gamal will correct me if I'm wrong, but the process remains the same for deciding whether there is a requirement for external provision to be provided. And in terms of the consultation, there was extensive consultation with providers about the proposed changes, but I'm not sure about anyone else.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Any other questions or comments? I don't know if Mark wants to say anything regarding the reassurance that was sought from scrutiny last week, I think, as Councillor Holmes has pointed out. But okay, thank you. So if there are no more questions or comments, can I ask Council Cabinet to agree on the recommendations 2.1 to 2.4? Okay, that's agreed, thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask for clarification? The paper Executive Scrutiny Board, it refers to Council Cabinet Agenda tonight, item 6, performance update.
Yeah, if the monitoring officer will explain.
Sorry,
this one.
because this item 6 on the recommendations from executive scrutiny is not related to an actual item on the cabinet agenda, we're going to discuss that as a separate recommendation that has been given at the end of the meeting. So it's because there's no sort of direct correlation with the report on the agenda. So we thought it was just for clarity, we'd cover the agenda and then deal with that extra recommendation that's come from scrutiny without muddying the waters.
And just to clarify on item 8, the Cabinet has accepted Scrutiny Board's recommendation to Council Cabinet that officers reassure them that the delegation, as at paragraph 2.4, is acceptable and in line with the rules. And Mark Taylor's agreed to do that. So that covers that one off. Thank you. So we move then to item 9, which is proposals to increase school places at Murray Park School. Councillor Russell again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This has been to Cabinet a couple of times now, the expansion at Murray Park School. As Council Cabinet will know, we embarked on a statutory consultation. The majority of staff and parents who responded to the consultation were in favour of the school expansion, and as a local authority we have the statutory duty to ensure that there are sufficient school places across the city, and Murray Park is a key piece of the jigsaw in terms of that bigger picture. 2 objections were received during the statutory notice period, both from local residents with concerns over traffic and parking. Neither of those objections made specific reference to the statutory consultation. All previous comments from local residents on these matters were passed to the Development Control Department to be considered alongside the planning application for the associated expansion of the school buildings, and the Council are exploring options to mitigate any potential impact on the local area by potential increased congestion, and they will be incorporated into the design of the new school. Hopefully, if we can make sure that they are viable for the development. Given, as I've said, Chair, in view of our statutory obligations to ensure sufficient school places, and in spite of these 2 objections that we received, I would still recommend to Council Cabinet that we move ahead with the plans as they are, with the added assurance for residents in the local area that we will look to mitigate the impact of any potential increase in traffic and congestion in the design phase of the expansion.
Thank you. And Councillor Holmes has indicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I welcome those comments. I think we've had a conversation about this, the last Cabinet, with regards to this issue. I think the main issue is mitigation and finding a package for local residents in terms of the impact of parking, which we all know in all of our wards is a massive issue and very, very difficult to resolve. However, the planning application, as it comes forward, and the heads of terms for the if that's the right word in this particular application, would be mitigation. That's what we're going to have to do to actually find for the residents. And hopefully we can come up with some kind of measures which will not only alleviate the impact of this, but maybe make the current situation better. So ward councillors are willing and will be working on this with the relevant planning officers to hopefully get this sorted.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. I'm sure Councillor Russell and officers will take that on board in terms of providing adequate mitigation. Councillor Skelton, please.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that. I mean, Mickleover isn't my own ward, but I have had people contact me about it. And again, it's the issue of the traffic. So I think it is now a golden opportunity to really get to grips with this. You know, if we can do it here, then I'm sure we can do it at any other school in the city. So I think all power to the elbow.
Councillor Russell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks to Tony Blair over there and Councillor Skelton for their comments. You know, of course, we welcome contributions from local councillors and any councillor that's got an interest in doing so. The only caveat I would put on this is, whilst of course we will seek to mitigate the impact on local residents in terms of traffic and transport, it will not be at the cost of providing the best learning environment for the young people at the school.
Fair enough. Okay, any other contributions then on this item? No. Okay, so the recommendation from scrutiny was to make no recommendation. However, they have requested further details on cross-city school travel to be included in a planned report to the board on school place planning. So you'll be able to pick that up, I guess, Gamal. Thank you. So that is agreed. And so if I can then just ask Council Cabinet members please to indicate whether they approve the recommendations at 2.1. Yep, that's agreed, thank you. So we go then to item 10, which is the contract and financial matters report, Councillor. And the addendum, yes, that's right. So we'll look at both of those. Councillor Shanker, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the report details 5 items that require reporting and approval by Cabinet as listed in 1.1, with the recommendations listed at 2.1 to 2.5. Can I just bring a typo error in the report to Cabinet's attention at 4.5 on the second line? That should read 1.627 million and not 14.627 million. Just going back to the Executive Scrutiny Board's recommendations, there's some additional information provided in the addendum, and also we're arranging for the Section 151 officer to meet up with the Chair of the Executive Scrutiny Board to discuss what further information would help the Board for future financial and contractual procedure matter reports without complicating the reports, but keeping them streamlined, but providing the necessary information for the Scrutiny Board to effectively scrutinise Cabinet papers.
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Just the conversation was a cross-party really at scrutiny about this. We just felt that some of the detail was light. I'll give you a couple of examples as to why we had an issue with it. because we didn't feel we could properly scrutinise without that detail. And one of them is the Salix loan funding to do with the street lighting scheme. Now, we know, obviously, we have a PFI contract. We know that there's been various schemes to better manage the street light systems, to improve the street light systems, the type of bulbs that we're using, and all that kind of thing. One example, I think, a couple of years ago now, was a 25% reduction in some of the electricity used, but the lighting wasn't affected. So, you know, why do we do that? How much is that being saved? Where does that fit with regards to this LED? You know, is this a wholesale change to LED? What we've got already? Why are we having to take a loan out when we've got a PFI contract? Now, I'm sure there's answers to all of these, and I'm convinced, obviously, there will be answers to all of those kind of questions, but they're the kind of things which the scrutiny wanted to know about. We didn't have a relevant officer there to tell us, and there was nothing in the, you know, there wasn't the why we're doing this. The second issue, which is similar, which is a 4.7 vehicles and plant equipment. Now, years ago now, it seems, when I was deputy leader of the council and cabinet member, the kind of conversations we had with officers when this sort of thing came up about plant purchasing, procurement, was, you know, is this the right time? Why is this the right time? Can we keep this equipment running for another couple of years? Is it efficient to do that? Why are we actually spending this revenue now? Some background to that. Now, I'm sure there is valid reasons, but we weren't presented those in scrutiny. And this is a revenue budget, so this could obviously be used for other services, for example. So it does matter as to why this is being spent at this time. But the scrutiny board couldn't really come to a view either way because we didn't have the detail to scrutinise. So that's just two examples of why we felt the report didn't have the background that we needed to make recommendations to you tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Yeah, I'll bring in Mark next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I fully appreciate the concerns of the Scrutiny Committee. Because the data had been revised, there were limited officers available to actually report and discuss the reports when they were debated. I think that there is a great deal of information behind each of one of these recommendations, which it's a question of balance as to how much information we provide. I think if we can ensure that the officers are present and able to discuss and resolve the concerns of the Scrutiny Board at the meeting, it would certainly help. And as I say, I've asked Democratic Services to arrange a meeting for me with the chair of the Scrutiny Committee so we can get that right balance.
Thank you, and I think that is the answer, is to have officers at that scrutiny meeting that can answer any questions and provide you with the information that you need, Councillor Holmes. So that will, I think, the issue with the change of the date caused some problems on this occasion. I'll bring in Paul Robinson, Chief Executive.
It might also be helpful if, rather than having huge numbers of officers, if it's a big agenda, all waiting, in case members might ask, it would be helpful if people could indicate on the agendas when they go out that this is a particular area we'd want significant debate on. It's just, some agendas have multiple things, and we have officers sat there for significant periods of time, but only to be asked one question is a bit limited. So I think we just need to talk to you about, these are the areas, this is the one particular one. You know, if it's about lighting, we can get the highways team there, and that's fine, we can have a good debate about that. But if we again get that, and we get housing, and we get everybody else, the danger is we've got 20 people sat there, and not all of them are going to speak. So I just think I agree we need to do more, but I think we just need to work out between us how we do that in the best way and the most efficient way, really. We've obviously gone too far the other way.
Councillor Holmes.
It wasn't just about officers, because the main issue was we understand with the processes that there will be background information, significant detail in just those two items alone, because it's involving 1.627 million and the other one is 110,000. So, you know, significant amount of money. Therefore, there has to be, you know, Cabinet Part 2, and all the officers' reports will have gone through your own scrutiny, if you like, and the relevant Cabinet member to get to this point. So we know that detail exists. And what we were saying was that we would have expected at least 2 or 3 paragraphs of background to be added to it, because we know it exists, and that's the problem we have. Well, I assume it exists. We don't know it exists because we haven't seen it as a scrutiny board. Do you see where the problem is? And we felt that we couldn't do our job, and so we're not confident. And that's why, and if this was cross-party, this is not a political dig in any way. This was a cross-party discussion we had involving your members too. And genuinely, the recommendations to reject this until further details could be provided was a genuine thing. It was no way was it a political move. That was felt by everybody. So, you know, I'm not happy that you're going to be agreeing these things without the proper scrutiny, in my view. But, you know, we are where we are.
Yeah, I'm sure those comments are noted, Councillor Holmes, in terms of the level of information that's provided in future reports, and officers, I'm sure will take that on board. I've got Councillor Repton next, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to draw your attention to page 3 of the report, where there is plenty of detail about some pretty innovative initiatives that my department are involved in, and this touched on what we're debating at full council last week about trying to support more people at home or close to home. And in a small way, it's our role in helping support people out of hospital, because the ironic thing is that sometimes hospitals are not the most healthiest places to be, because if you're in there, you can contract a whole range of illnesses which can make you worse than when you went in. And so I think instinctively people don't want to be in hospital if it's safe and appropriate to do so. That's the words I used at that debate. And I think we're in a situation here where we can have 46 people where it's safe and appropriate to do so, to be supported closer to home. And I think you see that where we're investing at both Perth House and at Arboretum House, and making sure that we can get people back out, back home, properly supported in the best possible way without the risks that there are going into hospital. So we're playing in a small way our part, but I think we need to be building on this and doing more of this over the coming months and years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. I'm sure members would, of all parties would welcome the work that you've been doing on this. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. Yes, just continuing on from what Councillor Repton has said, this is very welcome, something I think the Council has been trying to do and encourage the Health Service to work with us on this for some years. So it's very good to see that this is going to happen. I just wanted a little in more information about timescales. Obviously, this is for the winter period, and winter is upon us. I presume we're all ready to go and just push the button as soon as this has been agreed.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. Anything further to respond? Councillor Repton? Anything further to respond to? No, all fine. Okay. Any other comments then? Okay then. Yeah. Succinct. Yes. So, notwithstanding the issues that scrutiny have raised, which will be addressed in future, in terms of future reports, can I ask if Cabinet members are happy to accept the recommendations at item 10 and also item 10 addendum, please? Yep, lovely. That's agreed then. Thank you. That brings us to the end. Oh, sorry, yes, there's the item that's not on the agenda, that's right, which is a bit of a novel one. So it covers performance update, delivery of street pride elements of the neighbourhood charter to enhance the street scene and living environment in the city, and the recommendation from Scrutiny Board was to resolve to recommend to Council Cabinet to provide at least a minimum level of resource in the budget for 2018-19 for engagement, education and enforcement action in all wards across the city. So I don't know whether we've not got any powers to particularly implement that this evening. I guess it's just for noting. I don't know if Councillor Afzal wants to say anything on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, we're currently consulting on the 18-19 budget, so we'll ensure that adequate resources provided citywide. on the priority areas that we have. So we've got to be realistic about it. So I personally feel, therefore, that this recommendation is not really required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So we've got the budget scrutiny meeting coming up, of course, so it will be for appropriate for members of scrutiny to raise this in that forum as well. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, just on that, the discussion again at scrutiny revolved around various aspects of your pledges, your 50 pledges, one of them being, making the city clean, tidy, et cetera, and the point was, which we all agreed with, that if there was at least some minimum level of neighbourhood resource, whether that be officers and related resources, then each ward could contribute towards that pledge. Without that, I think you're going to struggle to meet it.
Thanks, Matt. You've done a great job in promoting our pledges. Thank you. But I'm sure you'll want to raise it as well at the scrutiny and of the budget. So we'll have a further conversation there. Councillor Repton.
Yeah, I think this is really good news. I don't know what our internal... Oh, she's gone now. Our communications, there's non-communications there, I don't know where she's off to. She's probably writing a copy. We need to make sure that this is good news. I think when we look at when people are crying out for action to be taken, then we're taking it seriously. And I think the Cabinet member needs congratulating himself and his staff on the progress that they've already made in such a short period of time in terms of helping remove that blight from people's lives. I think we need to build on that, but we need to also make sure the public are aware, and I can see that Councillor Holmes is joining us to make sure that we shout out loudly that these pledges are being fulfilled. We are meeting the needs of people of Derby, and I'm glad that you appreciate that as well, Councillor Holmes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. Councillor Skelton.
Yeah, just with relation to this enforcement action, this is obviously the first of, I think, is it 2 or 3 other areas that are going to be targeted? What's the sort of timescale for getting round all of the others?
I don't know if Councillor Afzal wants to reply to that. Oh no.
We will target, but at the moment we're just concentrating on the priority areas, and it's working a lot more effectively. And I think the key thing is the local residents, the people of Derby are actually seeing the difference, and we are way ahead of our pledges anyway, so I'm quite proud of what we've done, and all the credit goes to all the people who are involved. So rather than trying to spread ourselves too thinly all across the city, I think we need to be guided by intelligence, and wherever the priority wards are, wherever there's a need, that covers across the whole of the city. That's what we'll be concentrating on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Afzal. And thanks and congratulations to you for work for this pledge from Councillor Repton. We'll have that recorded in the minutes, I think. Yeah. Okay, so if there's nothing further, no further questions or comments, that brings Council Cabinet to a close. So I wish everyone a happy Christmas and see you all in the new year.
Thank you.